LSU football Twitter is not in a great headspace. LSU football message board folks, whether that's subscription based or otherwise, are not in a great headspace. There's been a lot that has been put on this high school signing class that LSU staff had worked to assemble over the last really 3 years. And it still looks very good on paper. It looked better on paper 2 weeks ago. Of course, the news of Bryce Underwood decommitting was gutting to LSU staff, to the program, and to the fan base. Earlier today, Kade Phillips, a 5-star defensive back that LSU had worked to flip away from Texas in August, decided he was flipping back from LSU to Texas. You've got Jakeem Stewart, who's reclassified, and a lot of folks feel is trending towards Southern Cal. And I think there are a lot of people in LSU land, not necessarily the staff specifically, they've got more information than we do, but most people who follow the program, whether fans or folks that cover the team, that are like, this is an absolute disaster for LSU. And I completely understand that sentiment. Having a commitment for a year from the number one player in the nation at the most important position in all of sports and losing them at the last hour is brutal. You realize what LSU's got to do in the secondary to get where they're trying to be and get back to the run that LSU was on over the course of almost 2 decades of grabbing 5-stars from all over the country, put them in the defensive secondary for 3 years, churning out Thorpe Award winners, All-Americans and first-round picks, and becoming DBU. And they haven't been that for a few years. And you felt like when you brought back Corey Raymond, there's a good chance that you could continue on that path. And DJ Pickett's name's been rumored about here and there, and most people say he's going to be locked in, but how can you trust anything that any of these young men are doing at this point? It's a really difficult situation that they're in, and from the outside, it's gut-wrenching to sit there and watch. But Kade Phillips is committed to one place, and then committed to another place, and then committed back to the other place. And that hurts your ability to put together that class that had 2 5-star corners and the number one corner in the state of Louisiana, and Aiden Anding. And then Jakeem Stewart, who was the number one player in the nation in the junior class and is now reclassified. That guy gets away from South Louisiana. When those things happen, it's devastating to LSU fans when Joe McKnight leaves and when Landon Collins leaves and Greg Robinson leaves. And you know the names of the guys from the state of Louisiana that have gone on to other places. And when those guys don't commit to LSU, it's jarring to LSU fans. And I get all of that emotion that goes into this. I changed personally my investment in the world of high school recruiting like 7, 8, 9 years ago. Like when I was in high school and college, I mean, I was locked in. Give me all the information. Tell me everything you know. This is do or die. This is the way you have to build your program. LSU's really good at it. That's why they're competing for championships. This is the most important thing to pay attention to. And I stopped because you've got high school kids throwing hats all over the place on tables and flying in out of airplanes and decommitting on the last day without the staff knowing anything. And I'm going, okay, here's how I feel about recruiting now. Tell me about it when the ink dries. I don't care what socks they wore to camp. I don't care who had the last visit. I don't care what their girlfriend's car is on Instagram. Like that stuff is not important to me. Recruiting is, but let me see when the ink dries. That's the way I feel about it. And now that we've gotten into this NIL era, and just look at Hayes Fawcett's feed right now for On 3. He's got all these graphics up, and there are flips every 15 minutes. There was one today from Miami to Oregon. There was one today from Auburn to Michigan. LSU and Texas have been involved in multiple Kade Phillips. It's not just LSU that's losing players. The ones that we care about, but it's not just LSU. It's all over the country. And we're now at the 11th hour, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on right now. There are collectives that are just moving money around, and that's the most powerful thing here. And when you're dealing with young people, 18, 17-year-olds, in these amounts of money, you're going to get mind changes. I had a conversation over the last 2 weeks with someone who played college football 15 years ago. And I said, was anyone on your team like really have a ton of money. Just obviously have a ton of money. And he said, not really. Like, there were guys that were getting $3,500 here, $1,700 here, $1,000 here. You got a job and you might have gotten a little bit more. But there was money involved. And certainly, trust me, if someone had handed me $3,500 cash when I was a freshman at LSU, that would have been jarring to me. Now we're dealing in the millions. It's a different world. There are millions of dollars on the table. And I don't know this because I didn't talk to everyone who played college football 15 years ago, but I did have one conversation with a player. And like nobody had $1.5 million for the time between October and Christmas. Like that wasn't happening. You couldn't hide that well enough. Like Reggie Bush is a famous situation. I'm not suggesting it never happened once. I'm suggesting it was far out of the norm. And now you've got this happening, and these flips are going to happen all across the country, all over the place. And I feel like LSU's probably going to be on the short end of it more often than not, and that's a discussion that we need to have. But now I've completely shifted on all this because it's like Kade Phillips is not going to come to LSU. But if you lose Kade Phillips and Jakeem Jackson, who was once a high four-star corner, who's 2 years older and was a starter for Florida for the first 2 games this year, transfers over to LSU, that's what and what to me. Like, I don't know if Kade Phillips is any good. He probably is. Jakeem Jackson's probably good. It's all about roster composition at this point. Because the thought that we had that if you get a high schooler, you'll have him for 3 or 4 years and you can develop him in the program. So it's better to go to the high school ranks than it is to go to the transfer portal where you're getting mercenaries for a year. It's rooted in truth, but can you really be sure you're getting the high school kid for more than 1 year? Can you? No. So it's just year to year. I mean, basketball was already like this because you're only dealing with 9 guys that play anyway, and you'll just go get the next 4 in and go to get the next 4 the next year, and everybody's in the portal. And we already knew this about basketball. And baseball, to an extent, LSU's going to bring their high schoolers in, but they're going to go and they're going to supplement it with some high-end guys out of the transfer portal. Football, we kind of thought was a little bit closer to the old model when you're at a place like LSU, and you can bring in 25, 4- and 5-star players. But these guys, it behooves them financially to bail on their school or their commitment every single year. That's the best way to open the treasure chest. And we need to ditch the word commitment because it doesn't exist anymore. We can go with intention. We can go with, there is no commitment. Very, very, very rarely. These guys are flipping. They come for a year, they leave, they play 4 games, they redshirt, they're out of there. Like it's a different world. And so for me, it's not going to change personally my investment when LSU comes out of the tunnel. When LSU comes out of the tunnel, I'm ready to go. I don't care how much the right tackle's making. I don't care how much the other team's running back's making. I don't care about any of that stuff. When LSU comes out of the tunnel, I'm ready to watch them play football. I will be every bit as emotionally invested in that Clemson game next year as I was for Alabama this year. That's just the way that I'm wired. But as far as recruiting goes, just show me what the roster looks like for Clemson. I can't get invested in 5-star cornerbacks. I can't get invested in 5-star quarterbacks. I can't get invested in 3-star running backs. I can't even get invested in the way that a young player plays and what they may look like down the road because there's just – C.J. Daniels said last week to The Advocate, it really behooves me to come back. The portal's not even open yet, and he's in it a week later. So I can't follow that as religiously as I once did. We'll write about it. I'll talk about these guys for you. But as far as my emotional investment goes, like it's still roster building is still the most important piece in collegiate athletics. Kirby Smart said it. He's right. Players win games, not coaches. The way that you get these players now is so wildly off the wall and so back room that how am I supposed to even fake like I have any clue what's going on out there, or that I know what the environment's going to be like hour to hour, not day to day or month to month, literally by the hour. I can't do it. So for me, show me the guys they've got on scholarship for the next year. And right now, I don't really know much about LSU's team next year, so I can't forecast a ton about it. But got to get as many of these highly ranked high school kids in as you can, and you got to hit the portal really hard. And as everyone's been saying for a long time, you have to spend a bunch of money. And Brian Kelly can't spend his money, and Joe Sloan can't spend his money, and Blake Baker can't spend his money, and Frank Wilson can't spend his money. They've got to go to the boosters in the collective and take what money they have, determine what players they can get with that amount of money, and put the best product on the field they can do. And I can't even pretend to know what those conversations are like, what amount of money is ready to be given out, and how close they're missing out on some of these players that are committing to LSU and then deciding to go elsewhere. But I would suggest this. The more often you get into bidding wars with Texas and Michigan, you probably aren't going to win the majority of those. Not saying you'll never win one. Probably not the majority of those. That's my guess. And LSU lost another one today with a decommitment of Kade Phillips from LSU to Texas after Texas has lost his commitment to LSU. So it is what it is. That's my story, and that's the way that I'll feel about it. We're going to talk. I mean, this is like I said at the top of the show, as big a year as there is in college football with signing day and with the portal opening and with people deciding how they're going to go about. Now, LSU can't approach kids in the portal right now because it's not open yet, but you'll know who's out there, and you got to start figuring out the ones you need to go after, the ones you can get, and the ones that fit. And we'll see what Brian Kelly and his staff are able to do over the next 2 weeks. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.